have one right here. That whole bunch. The parties with the singing and the flute and the chanting, those are espeths or sabbaths or whatever
don't get
they're called.
excited. Huh?
Read what they do, Guy. They use blood in their rituals, and the blood that has the most power is baby's blood.
I would like to add the disclaimer that we do not approve of infant sacrifice here on Covendom. Welcome, everybody. We're glad that you joined us. If you're watching us, it's usually either through YouTube or through Facebook Live. If you're watching us through YouTube, it's on the Hex Education channel. Please make sure to like and subscribe. This is Season 5, Episode 3 of our new format, which has been so lovely. We've loved all of our guests. I should have done intros first, my bad. My name is Levi Rowland. These are my fabulous co-hosts, Brian Kane and Ellie Barnes. We are all high priesthood of the Alexandrian tradition of witchcraft. So our new format includes the intro that I do, and then we're going to have a news segment, sort of news of the world, and then an occult demonstration, and then we have an ambush interview each episode. We do not know the questions. We do not know the subject. Today's ambush interviewer is Miss Carie Ewers. Carie Ewers is an Alexandrian priestess. She's been featured in multiple books, most recently Jamal DeFiosa's follow-up to All the King's Children, involving a beautiful interview she did about being Alexandrian. We're going to bring her on and she'll do a little bit more about her socials.
The other books that she's in.
I just did the most recent, and she was also in Brian Kane's fantastic book, Initiation into Witchcraft, available through Warlock Press.
I mean, she was really in that
She is definitely in that one, and it is a fantastic book. Yes, it's a great introduction if you're looking for something to break you into the world of traditional initiatory craft. Mm-hmm. But that is our lovely intro. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to see what Carie asks us later.
I know, me too.
It's going to be great. But before that, Brian is going to tell us some news.
The news of the week. So, well, I had a couple of things prepared, but this is the moments that you wait for. You know, the entire thing that I designed this about was that sometimes we'd have a little bit of like gossip or what's really being talked about in the communities right now. But before we get into that, I'm going to share a little fun note, because there's going to be two things. One was our first guest, actually, Tracy Fraiche, who the Gardnerian High Priestess, is also an admin for Alexandrian and Gardnerian Witchcraft, The Path of Initiation on Facebook. And she posted an article because they just recently discovered a new discovery about the Romans. And it was a vat of oil. And before this time, they had no record of of Romans ever using patchouli oil. Ooh. But they actually have now discovered that they did indeed have access and use patchouli oil because it was preserved in this vial, along with some other things. They could tell like what it was cut with and everything. And obviously it was imported, but yes, the Romans were running down the world just like the hippies.
I was about to say, you could be a hippie in ancient Rome.
Patchouli oil.
Who knew?
Patchouli oil could have been used for lots of things other than wearing, I'm sure. But it is it's just interesting that we're still discovering little things like that about people's lives. It goes on with that idea that there's nothing new under the sun. We think something's new and we find out, well, it's not really new, is it? So I can't think of what cultures patchouli really comes from, but I want to feel like it's the classical Orient.
The
classical Orient.
I think it's subcontinent.
It would have been called the Orient then, which is why I say classical Orient. It's no longer called the Orient.
But I think, am I wrong, Ellie?
I will say that I grow it profusely in my gardens. It's a zone 9 plant, almost 10, so that does put it in closer to the equator.
Do you know if that was a Native American plant too?
I don't think so.
I think it's imported.
No, I think it's imported, but it thrives in level 8, level 9, level 10. You can buy seeds at most good organic seed shops online, and wow, it's a big bush with thick stems. You get these gorgeous leaves, and then the little blossom is kind of a spike-like purple, and then the roots, like I put them in my fire bundles because they smell so great.
Pretty cool.
I mean, it's a great plant and really easy to grow. I think it can't freeze, so you can't grow it in northern climates.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing, Ellie. So back to the news. So here's the good stuff. So this is impossible for me not to bring up, but it's going to be very difficult for me to maintain priestly composure. All right. So there are lots of what we'd like to call traditions in witchcraft, right?
Yes.
And we have to be very careful about how we speak about these things because we don't really want to be offensive on purpose. So there is a tradition that I have a very hard time taking seriously, and this is about that tradition. So I'm just going to be honest first and foremost. I consider this to be a pagan tradition that has more in common with Christianity than it does with modern paganism. And I think that it has very little to do with real witchcraft. I think it has even very little to do with Scott Cunningham Wicca. Like, I think it really is a thing unto itself. It's always made me think of Campfire Girls. But it's the news of the week that's going everywhere. I don't have particular interest about it. I find it amusing, but it is the news. And I'm going to make a point about it, though, which actually has nothing to do with trashing this tradition. But the tradition is called the Corellian tradition, named after ships in Star Wars, actually. So the Corellian tradition is, I don't exactly know when it was founded, but it was founded by a man named Ed Hubbard, and that's the only name I'm going to say because he is associated with the tradition anyway. So I guess that the idea here of what's going on, and I'm not going to name other names, but it's all the talk of the town. So apparently he was the founder of this tradition, and they operate this tradition the way Christians or other organized religions might operate. There is literally nothing to do with witchcraft or how we would ever approach everything. So he's sort of the central head of it, and his title, I guess, was the Chancellor. You know,
German.
Yes. So, and like I said, nothing to do with what we do, but it is a conversation happening in the magical community. I think there's an importance that I'm going to bring up about this and why I found it fascinating for this conversation. So apparently he became ill, and he put some de facto woman in charge of the tradition while he was ill. And apparently, as he regained or felt fear of losing power, there became some sort of power struggle. So he sort of dethroned her and put somebody else in her place. And there's been a mass rebellion and a massive amount of people quitting and leaving the tradition, hundreds and hundreds of people quitting and leaving this tradition in protest to this woman's removal. So I'm not going to get involved in the eternal politics. I'm just going to say real witchcraft would never have a chancellor. Real witchcraft doesn't have a central head, and I find traditions that do that to be very alien to me, because it does create this thing that happens in organized religion. So you've got this power struggle, and now you've got droves of people leaving this tradition. You could never get me to denounce my priesthood based on something somebody else did.
Oh, I love that point.
And that's the difference, I think, between priesthood and, you know, if you got a bad pope in the Catholic Church, I think most priests would still retain their priesthood and just wait till it passed and did what they could.
The Borgias, anybody?
Yes.
Medicis?
You know.
There's been quite a few.
Yes. So, you know, I think, you know, in witchcraft, we just don't have that. We have the autonomy of every coven.
Yep.
You know, we have our elders who we honor. We take wise counsel from them when we can. And we appreciate their guidance and have great respect for our uplines. But in real witchcraft, there is no central authority and there's no one to dethrone anyone. And to me, it just further it makes my case that this has absolutely nothing to do with witchcraft. I don't really consider it a witchcraft tradition. I'm not telling people not to call themselves witches, but just based on how it operates, it's a pagan thing in my mind.
Organization.
And I think the reason so many people are leaving it is because it's a weed in the garden, you know, and that's just my magical judgmental way of looking at it. But anyway, that's going on. So if you are a member of the Corellian tradition, I'm sorry. You know, another thing I don't respect about it is, where I'm going to do my one little bit of trash talking, is I'm well aware that in its original formation, one of the mission statements that they had was for their people to go join initiatory groups to get the secrets and bring them back to the Corellians. So in other words, they, they proceeded with treachery.
Purposeful
treachery.
fraudulence.
And, you know, also I know they benched a lot of rubber checks in Salem at one point in time. So, you know.
I knew there'd be some sort of like side shade you had.
So I'm just not really impressed. And so I've always had a standing policy to not ever have anyone in my coven who was ever in that tradition, for that simple fact that I can't trust. But in this particular case, I think some people might just be dodging a bullet. So best of luck with all of you. May the goddess guide your path. And so now we're going to move on to Ellie's occult demonstration.
Demonstration.
Ooh, I'm excited.
well, this was one of, I came up with this idea quickly. Actually, Brian came up with it, and he said, well, you are one of the resident herbalists, Ellie. Why don't you do something with plants? And I said, I'm going to make an aspergillum. And I do this regularly, and I sprinkle holy water that I make myself with an aspergillum. And I did really hear about this from one of our most important teachers in our tradition. And she used the word aspergillum. So I did some research today about it too, and just looked online. I do see that it's mostly listed as a Catholic practice, and the priest would use an actual brass tool with a little sponge in it that he would dip in the holy water.
Alex actually used to use those exact things.
Right,
Yeah,
that
an
he could
aspergillum.
sprinkle around the water on people.
It didn't stick, but he did have them. I've seen.
Oh yeah, they're big in Christianity.
But the reference material and where we study the idea of aspergillum is pre-Christian, of course.
The Druids did it with plants.
And there were many traditions that used an herb bundle to sprinkle holy water. And the main plants used are cedar wood, crocus, hyssop. I saw hyssop listed several times. I have some couple funny facts about this too that I think is cute.
I'll just add, because I just happen to randomly know this. Supposedly the Druids did it with vervain.
It's in here.
Oh, is it?
vervain.
Sorry.
It
Shut
is.
up now.
No, that's one of the plants that I should have underlined.
Verbena, very witchy.
Where are they?
Wait, is vervain the same thing as verbena?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Lemon
it is.
verbena is separate.
That's different.
I'm not an herbalist.
Okay. Where is the list?
I
Anyway,
stole the
while
line
I
from
while I
Brian.
look for
I
that,
like
I'm
the
going to keep
crops.
talking. So certainly, as religions grow and change in the culture, whether it be by natural cultural changes or whether some new entity comes in and colonizes their land, new religious people see what the people were doing on the ground before they get there. And there was certainly a history of using plants and sticks to sprinkle water. Usually running water out of a living source, which means a stream as opposed to a still lake. They would want the water coming as a source of it. So in Catholicism, it's going to be a specific hyssop branch or the metal tool that was used to sprinkle the water. What I love about witchcraft is that it really keeps me connected to the earth plane. So these plants I just picked, and they are...
It's invisible.
Oh,
on
because it's got the
camera.
green screen.
Oh, it's invisible. It's magic.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know that would happen.
So-
Wait, can we put it in front of something? Will that work?
So Tulsi, which is
This is witchcraft.
a type
How do you
of,
make it
right?
not green?
A type of basil, a stick of bay from my bay tree, and some fresh rosemary. And I often use mugwort, which is of the moon, and rosemary is of the sun. The Tulsi basil is from Mars, and the bay is, I think it's either Mercury or the sun. So what I do when I'm making my own aspergillum, these are just damp, I put the tops at the same height because that's where the little flower buds start to come out. And when you pinch it a little bit, it really smells. Then I trim off the base, and often I would clean off some of these bottom leaves. And then I would wrap it. This is just for easy use. I would wrap it with my twine and tie it off so that I kind of have a wand.
I can smell it. It smells so good.
Right, and I would probably go up the plant a little bit more so that really I just have like a fluffy end. And so the real point I want to make and differentiate, so many people smudge with burning sage and burning plants. Those are offensive smells, and they are used to get rid of spirits and energies that you do not want. Sage is a difficult plant to breathe a lot of. It's really strong. And when I hear my clients say, oh, I'm saging myself in my house every day, I'm thinking, okay, well, you've gotten rid of absolutely everything in there. What are you doing to bless, heal, and cleanse your cleaned up area? So I always, if I'm going to sage, I sage, and then I sprinkle my holy water. And I make my own holy water. I definitely use the same bowl. This is a pottery bowl, kind of blue like the water, bottled water.
Somebody's asking you if the twine color matters.
You could certainly choose the twine color I'm going to read in Key of Solomon something that they say about making your own plant aspergillum, about the timing. I love the idea that if you chose the color of the day of the week, you would reinforce the reason that you're doing the cleansing and the sprinkling and the healing and the blessing. So I fill up my bowl 3/4 with spring water, which I get in 5-gallon buckets delivered. Then I add a teaspoon of sea salt, not land salt. I try to describe this to people. Sea salt is dehydrated ocean water. Land salt comes out of Utah. Then I add, where's my frankincense?
Sea salt comes from the sea.
Comes from the sea.
All salt comes from the sea.
Land salt comes from
Then
the
I
land.
take my bottle of frankincense oil. We do carry it in the shop. And I put in 3 or 4 drops with my little thing. Where's my little thing?
Right there.
There it is. These are the
Pipette.
plastic, what are they called? Pipettes.
Pipette.
So you can go in your bottle clean and you can pull out 3 or 4 drops, and I put that. So a teaspoon of sea salt, 3 or 4 drops of frankincense oil. You can use others, but this is traditionally extremely holy. It is a plant of the sun. Then I bless my water, and I would just say, beautiful, cleansed, natural water, gift of the goddess, bring healing and cleanliness to my space, myself, and my purposes, etc. You'd use your own words. And I'm blessing it with my own hand because I'm a high priestess and I get to do that. So I love that.
Yes, you do.
Then I start in the east and I dip my plant in just a little bit and I sprinkle it around my space. And I go clockwise and I focus on doors and windows. I do myself. I do my dogs. And I'm now doing my 92-year-old father because he lives with me most of the time now. I want him to go away, but I can't do that. So I'm keeping him clean with holy water. It's the best I can do.
I'm blessing him.
Listen to what I read and learned about, though. In Buddhist culture and in the ancient Greece, the way they made holy water was they filled their bowl with running water from a stream. They put their salt in it. They had water and salt. They lit a torch, a sacred torch, and extinguished the flame in the bowl, which added fire and air. I didn't know that until I read that today. So ancient Greece and
Where'd you get that from?
Buddhism.
Where did you get that?
That was from my internet searches in 3 places. 3 places.
That's the Greek
She found her sources, people. She
Okay,
found her sources.
here's the piece out of the Key of Solomon, Book 2, Chapter 11. Thou shalt make unto thyself a sprinkler of vervain, fennel, provencina, sage, valerian, mint, garden basil, and rosemary, gathered in the day and hour of Mercury, the moon being in her increase. Then cut a handle with a single stroke from a virgin branch of hazel. The length should be 3 spans, 0.6, whatever that means. Well, let's say that it's our arm, Bind together these herbs with a thread spun by a young maiden, and engrave upon the handle on one side the characters, and then it lists these characters in Theban or whatever one of the scripts is there. So I didn't realize how much it was used in grimoire
Thou
magic.
requireth a young maiden.
Right, a young maiden. But that adds purpose to the twine.
So young maiden,
right?
So
you would make your holy water, you would make your aspergillum, and I have found I take these with me when I run my seances, and if I'm doing any ghost cleansing or working after a death or a suicide, I'm sorry to say that, I don't just end with sage. I go through the entire building, people and places, with my fresh cut aspergillum and my fresh made holy water, and bless the space.
She gets from her yard.
Which I get from my yard, and bless.
She grew herself.
Bless and heal, because that's just sort of the first step with the saging.
How do you get a young maiden to spin your yarn?
I'm the young maiden. I order it online. It's called Amazon Prime, and I just pick it.
Her name is Amazon Prime.
Right, but I love the idea
a beautiful young maiden.
of choosing different threads. So I encourage you all to research an idea as simple as making your own aspergillum, and make one. You could even use plants you collect in your neighborhood. Make your own holy water and try it.
I love aspergillum.
Thank you.
You will
Lily,
love
that
it.
was wonderful.
Okay.
And it smells so. We should
Right?
go to all smell it here.
Oh, it's so great,
Make
isn't
sure
it?
to plug this too and tell them when we start taking it. But it's your turn now, Levi, to introduce our.
Yes. So as I said earlier, in a moment I'm going to bring on Miss Carie Ewers. Carie Ewers is a priestess of the Alexandrian tradition, the same tradition that we belong to. Like I said, she's appeared in books, and when we bring her on, we'll let her talk a little bit about her socials and how people can contact or find her in the World Wide Web. But I'm going to go ahead and set that up.
Don't forget to give her address.
Yes, and also I want to say...
I'm feeling very cheeky tonight.
I also want to say before I bring Carie on, after our ambush interview with Miss Carie Ewers, we will take call-ins for the show. And also I do see all of your lovely comments in the chat from Facebook, from YouTube, from everywhere. We see them all. And we can answer questions there as well. So there will be time after our interview. If you want to call in, the number is 309-GODDESS. That's 309-463-3377. If you're watching us on most platforms, you'll see the number on the screen. So I'm going to bring Miss Carie on.
Ta-da!
Hello.
Hello.
There we go. I got it.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
So, Miss Carie, how do people find you?
That's the eternal question, isn't it? That is the eternal question. Well, let's see.
How about we find
Just
her
Carie
lovely,
Ewers.
enchanting, and gorgeous? That's how we find her.
Oh,
I mean,
Yes. There we go.
Ellie, you're just saying that because it's true.
I resemble that.
How you can find me, I'm a psychic at Omen in New Orleans, and I also host the seances at Hex in New Orleans with the lovely Miss Ellie Barnes. And on Facebook, you can just search Carie Ewers, and if you're not a total creepy weirdo, I might accept your friend request.
It's
Probably
an
not.
important
No, I'm just
caveat.
kidding.
It's an important
Probably
caveat.
will.
If your name is
And
Dragon Unicorn, she's
Dark
not gonna
Borealis,
accept you for-
right. Dark Borealis on Instagram. And then I am launching a site called Wandering Witch Paranormal, so stay tuned for that. And I'm going to have a cooking show that I'm launching on YouTube. Lots of good stuff. Lots of good
Fabulous.
stuff.
Wow.
I also wanted to mention, in addition to Brian's incredible book that Levi mentioned and the amazing one by Jamal, I'm also a paranormal researcher, and I'm featured in an incredible book by a lovely New Orleans ghost hunter and tour guide named Doug Bookout.
Oh, yes, yes.
And it's called Guiding Spirit.
Yeah, it's a great book.
I love that one.
Yes. And
Yeah, he's just such a cool person too. But I love talking about the paranormal with him, and I was very flattered when he reached out and was doing like a second edition of his book and asked me to do a chapter. So
That's fabulous.
very cool. And yes, if you want to see a lot more of me than this, definitely get Brian's book because it's an incredible book on witchcraft. But you see a lot of me in it,
Shows a lot of
A lot.
stuff about
So, Miss-
Carie.
and Ellie too.
Miss Fantastic Carie Ewers,
Blessed be.
That's-
what
that's
is
the-
the topic of your ambush interview?
Okay, so it's really funny what kind of y'all started the chat about. I just wanted to ask some questions and get y'all's thoughts on not just being an Alexandrian, what led you to your different paths in high priesthood, how we feel about oath breakers and people being sneaky in their traditions. And I just had a few questions about what inspired y'all on your magical journeys.
So what do we call this?
Our
topic?
magical journeys.
Our-
I know. I was like,
It's a good
what is
term.
that topic?
Our magical journeys. All right.
Our magical journeys.
Magical journeys. I guess I should have had a name for the topic. I got very excited about the question.
Our magical journeys sounds like a lovely
What's in there?
after school sort of like
It
documentary
feels
style.
like we should like be holding our mom's hand and running through a field.
I would love to be doing that.
Magical-
Kind of. Just wearing like crystals
Yes,
and,
exactly. Full-
doing the thing.
Sunflower crown. So what is your first question, Miss Carie Ewers?
Blessed be Levi. Thank you.
Blessed
So
be.
my first question is for all of y'all. What was your first connection to witchcraft? And this is even before being Alexandria, but your first connection to witchcraft that you really knew, like, whoa, like something's touching my soul, something's touching who I am, like this is different. What was not only your first connection to witchcraft, but like how did it inspire you? Ellie, I would love to start with you. Blessed be.
Blessed be. I was exposed first probably to people who were studying shamanism in my family, and like the healing arts. My uncle studied energy healing, like Reiki and pranic healing. So as a young person, I was exposed to what we might call the white lighters, like the healers and bringing the light.
Yeah, I love that.
But I thought, well, this can't be the whole story. So then somebody said to my grandmother, someone's traveling from out of town, can they bring over their tarot cards? And my grandfather said, well, if they're not a witch. And I don't think I'd really heard that word. I mean, we read it in a few fairy tales, right? I'm still talking about like being a 5-year-old.
So they could bring their tarot cards over as long as they weren't
a witch. So, and that's from the,
right,
that's from
exactly.
the Southern, right, the Southern Baptist point of view. But I remember my hackles standing up, and I was like, I looked over at my grandmother and I beamed her a message. I was like, hell yeah, get that lady over here. I want to see who she is with her tarot cards and her witch in quotes. And she was a lovely psychic. She wasn't really a witch, she was a psychic. But it was really early, and I thought, that's where I fit in. That's where I fit in. And I just always knew that. And so I studied, I read about the folk stories with witches in them. I always wanted to meet witches, and I did a little tiny spell as a kid that witches and fairies would come at Easter, and instead of Easter eggs, they would leave fairies and notes from witches that I would find under the tree.
Now she's surrounded by gay witches.
Right? But that's the truth.
The magic came
That's
true.
the truth. I wanted them to
some
come
way.
see me. I wanted them to leave me special messages. I wanted to be seen by witches. Isn't that so primitive? But I just wanted it so badly. And then here I am. You're right.
I love it. I literally pictured 2 like 5-year-old Ellie. You know, like, I am Ellie, I am 5.
Same haircut.
I am witch. Like,
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
Well, thank you so much, Ellie. I love that. Brian, what is, I'm going to field this off to you. What were your first, like, connections to witchcraft that kind of inspired you and made you feel like, okay, this is it. Like, this is something bigger.
Well, you could just go on and on and on about it, can't you? So I just, I have to say, to summarize it, there's the early childhood stuff and my early teens, which was really more about hearing the mystery word witch, magic, right? And early on was very much, spent a lot of my time in the country, and my parents were very good about allowing us to have flourishing imaginations. So there are a lot of different instances that I can think of to where I was connecting to nature or intrigued by stories or people who were supposed to be witches. But I always have to take it back to what's relevant, really, and that's when I really found witchcraft, which is when I encountered Raymond Buckland's Complete Book of Witchcraft. And it tied all that stuff together, and I then began approaching witchcraft as a religious walk of life. And pursuing the goddess and going down that path. So I think that's the pivotal moment. But what drew me to that place to begin with was the mystery of the witch and a kindred to it and magic. I was into magic before I was into religion as a younger person. And, I remember weird comments as a kid of somebody saying that lady's a witch and things like that, and being like, ooh, what's going on?
Right. When can I go see her?
In the Northwest, there was a certain kind of moss that grew on trees that there we called witch's hair. And I used to, the child imagination was always like digging for it. So I think it's been a long journey. I definitely think it was a remembering for me. I definitely believe that I have been a witch before, and I've been things that were older than witches. But I have to say, the moment I really started pursuing real witchcraft.
I love that.
Lovely answer.
Thank you so much, Brian. Blessed be. Levi, I'm going to pass this off to you. Blessed be. What were your kind of first connections that inspired you with witchcraft, and what was? I'm very curious. I feel like I know, but what was that first little like for you?
Brian's first book. What was Levi's first witch book?
I grew up in very rural Appalachia, and so we still called people witches frequently, men and women. Actually, it's one of the last places where witch was not a gendered term. And so I had, like, my great uncle, Doc Rowland, was called a witch but he was a United Baptist deacon. Being a witch just meant that he could do things like cure children of thrush by blowing into their mouth, or like
right.
get rid of warts or whatever. So there's a lot of superstition and magic in Appalachia. It's just especially in sort of the mountains, not so much the foothills and whatever that were urbanized, but in the hollers, as it were. But I was more enamored with religion than I was the sort of folklore. So I rebelled against everything and became Catholic. But I was always obsessed with witches. Believe it or not, it was a thing in my youth. I have stories I wrote about witches. I have, pictures I would draw. I was obsessed with this concept for some reason, and I would check books out of the library. I read a lot about witchcraft from like a religious point of view, and I was obsessed with this image for some reason. But it never really came to anything, to be honest, when I was younger.
So it seemed.
The first book I read by
It was
people.
coming to this.
I know, right? The first book I read by people anyone would recognize in this circle was actually The Witch's Bible by the Ferrars, which is hilarious because they were Alexandrian, and then I ended up Alexandrian years down the road after I'd forgotten that.
Funny how that works out.
Yeah, forgot that book entirely. But I actually did not think it would end up being witchcraft, to be honest with anyone. I had been very, very Catholic. I had left that and become very, very bitter and sort of a non-believer for a very short period of my life, about 3 years. I've talked about it before. Realized that's never going to work for me. I very much believe in the divine. It's sort of the core of who I am. And I gave myself over to seeking where I saw that, and it just kept coming up as a goddess. I could not get away from the image of the Great Mother. And
beautiful. I love that.
Initiatory craft is one of the few movements that I think still honors her in a very meaningful way, and that has the structure I was craving in the community. So I reached out, and the rest is history. I've been initiated for almost a decade now and run a coven and everything. But yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, so for me, it's like sometimes I don't have those same stories of like, I remember working spells when I was young, and I remember like being super into, Charmed or super into a particular bit of pop culture. Mine was more just, I ended up here because I was seeking the goddess and I found her. That's kind of like the thing.
I think you prayed all along as a child, though, Levi.
I was very religious, yes.
But you were naturally tuned in to the gods. And I
Absolutely.
know in your mind, even as a little kid, I can see you talking to the gods and knowing they were real.
I think the initiate is really seeking the truth of God, even when we're young and we don't
I agree.
know how to vocalize
I agree.
her name.
Lovely first question. What's your second question, Ms.
Absolutely.
Carie? Ewers?
Okay. Thank you. Blessed be. So my second question, and this time, Levi, I'm going to start with you and then go down. What drew you to Alexandrian witchcraft? What was your call to become an initiate?
I'm going to have a really inappropriate answer, but it's just the truth, and I think it's always good to
so
speak
excited.
the truth. I reached out to Gardnerians first, actually, and they were incredibly rude, and I just kept running into all of these hurdles with Gardnerians and really unpleasant experiences. That's not to... I love Gardnerians. I consider them my brothers and sisters of the craft. I'm friends with many Gardnerians. I adore Thorn Mooney and many other people, so this is not a shot at Gardnerianism at all.
Crazy.
It is not a shot at the tradition at all, but my experiences were very negative. And when I started talking to Brian, he picked up on this very quickly and was like, maybe you should just go be Gardnerian. You don't seem to really care about the Alexandrian tradition. You seem to just want to be BTW. And you keep mentioning Gardnerian people. And so I went and had talks with them. It was just very unpleasant. And I came back to him and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I went through a period of like watching old clips of Alex and Maxine, and I just kept noticing that all of the Alexandrians seemed more religious and more fun about it. They were more connected. There was just this sort of spark in their videos and in the history of it. And I just allowed it to happen and stopped fighting it. And I think it was a lot of things I think were the gods.
Oh, I love that. Blessed be. That makes me really happy. Brian, what drew you to Alexandrian witchcraft?
Fate. I think it was fate. I really do.
Yeah, I love that.
Like Levi, I was very much just interested in becoming an initiate of the goddess. And Alexandrian was not the first thing I approached. It was Gardnerian witchcraft were the people that I was first talking to. In the course of that, met mixed people, met Alexandrians, and I had a year where I was spending a lot of time with both Gardnerians and Alexandrians, but really it was fate, and it's that my brothers and sisters and my teacher and my elders all ended up being of the line of succession that we call Alexandrian. It's all the priesthood of witchcraft. I've got Gardnerians I adore and look at as brothers and sisters, and I have Gardnerians I despise. I could say the same thing about Alexandrians, because some people are just jerks, to put it mildly. At least that's been my experience with them, But if someone's devoted to the gods and devoted to the work, we have way more in common than we do separate. The only difference between Gardnerians and Alexandrians is beauty, and perhaps we're just a little bit better than they are at magic.
So
but
hateful.
I think it was fate, honestly, when I look back at it. It wasn't so much I jumped in, my first initiation was supposed to be mixed trad, and it was mixed trad, really, in the sense that they had rights and privileges to both of them. But I really wasn't interested in being a jack of all trades. I wanted to pursue, and I did explore our California lineage. I talked to several high priestesses in that line, and I pursued Alexandrian. But like Levi, I had a very... Obviously, my coming out was a lot different than most people's because of the fame game and my association with my husband, who was the famous one at the time, right? So it was a different experience, but I was treated very poorly by initiates of the Gardnerian tradition, and for the most part, lovingly by Alexandrians, because they're greedy for power, and they said, "We want this one."
We want it.
He's adorable.
We want
That's why
him.
he
They're
said
greedy
we
for
want
power,
him.
whereas maybe some were afraid of it. So, blessed be.
Blessed be.
Blessed.
Blessed be. Thank you so much. Lovely Ellie, blessed be.
Blessed be.
What drew you to Alexandrian witchcraft?
I could talk about that for several days, but I'll try not to. Early in my
Right.
occult studies, I had my first two books were Marion Green's Good Magic or Positive Magic, and
that's a great one.
Paul Husson's Mastering Witchcraft. So I thought, okay, so it's out there. It's a practice, and it's at the time that was right before Scott Cunningham's Solitary Wicca. I assumed it was all coven based. Then that book came out, and I thought, oh, okay, so you can do it by yourself, or anybody can do it. And I really did look at all kinds of traditions of witchcraft, including a lot of the Robert Cochrane style, what we call traditional witchcraft today, or it became that. But I always thought, if I could be initiated Gardnerian or Alexandrian through an initiated lineage, that's what I want. But I thought I could never find it. In the South, I just thought, well, that's an impossibility, Ellie. You're going to have to just come up with something else. And so I worked alone, because the people I met or tried to meet, I was just like, yuck. I do not want to mix magical energies with these cake-eating, flower-wearing grass dancers.
Cake-eating, flower.
Sorry, and I
wearing
Dancer.
grass.
grass dancers, and I love people. Please, you guys know I do, but I was just like, that's not my style. So I just thought it was an impossibility. And then later, when I moved to New Orleans and started working at Hex, and I met Levi and Carie, and I was like, you guys are what? What? Well, da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, you're kidding me. And I was like, okay, la, 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 la. If I'm really good and smart and gorgeous over here, they're going to notice me. And they did, and it was all love from there on. But I'm thrilled and blessed to be a Alexandrian witch, and I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. Blessed be.
What a great
I
answer.
love that. Blessed be.
We're just all over here loving each other
mean,
today.
really, no.
No, this is a
Just loving, just a little, just a magic snuggle pile. I'm
All the children
here
out
for
there.
it. Okay.
So what's your next question,
So-
beautiful?
Okay. My third one, it's a little long-winded, so bear with me. Do you feel that being, and I'm going to start with Brian with this one, blessed be. Do you feel that being in an initiatory practice makes it harder to navigate relationships with non-initiates? And that could be a non-initiate that is a friend, a family member, a coworker, partner, just anything.
I was once walking through a park with two priestesses, and it was Rosie and Val Hughes, my teacher.
Oh,
And off in the distance was my husband, the notorious Christian Day, talking to somebody on the phone. You know, talking to somebody on the phone. He's with us, but he's in his own world. You guys all know what this looks
just
like.
having him a moment.
And we're having priestly conversations and enjoying the nature. We were in, the big New Orleans park. I can't think what it's called right now.
City
City Park.
City
Oh,
Park. thank
City
you.
Park, probably.
We were going through there, and all of a sudden, we don't even know who he's talking about. And he says to the person on the phone, because he loves to do this to me, you know, if you're not an initiate, Brian just simply isn't going to care about you. You know? And that's what Val did. Val thought that was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. She started
It's
laughing,
hilarious.
rolling it back down. Now, the truth of the matter is that I have had a few friends that are not initiates, and I have a few friends that aren't initiates of witchcraft now. But most of the people we only have so much time in the day. We only have so much energy. And so most of the people that I enjoy, most of the people that I spend time with, whether it's teaching or socializing, tend to be other witches, and it's not 100%, but I think it mostly comes from this is a big core of my life and where I focus most of my attention. There are plenty of people I've had that, so for me, I think it's time, because of time management, and I've learned to figure out where to invest my time. And so Christian and I are very different in this sense. Like, he'll want to invest his time in certain people, and I'll literally say to him, I'm like, why are we investing our time in these people? And he'll have his reasons or not, and I have to navigate that for myself, because I realize I only have so much time in the day, because quite frankly, I'm an introvert. So I need a percentage of time completely to myself. And so, I love meeting new people, and I don't think in the terms of you're not Alexandrian, or you're not an initiate, so therefore I'm not going to talk to you. But I only have so much time. So I do have a couple friends right now who are initiates of other things, but quite frankly, I think almost everyone in my life is an initiate into something. So blessed be.
Thank you. Blessed be. So, Levi, I'm going to turn this over to you now. Do you feel that being in an initiatory practice makes it harder to navigate relationships with non-initiates, just across the board, or people that aren't involved in witchcraft, but specifically non-initiates?
Personal life, no. I think part of that is because I do not make a living from magic in any way, or from divination. So, I have a corporate job, and I love it very much. So I think that's very different for me. I think a lot of people I know, they're they're much more plugged into this world in economic ways than I am.
I still want to read you right now. Read you to filth. I'm like, a couple months ago he was reading for us, and
I was.
His second book.
Oh no, I'm very plugged into the world in terms of I love being a part of it.
He doesn't do it to make money.
But yes, it's not my primary source, is what I mean.
Yeah.
No, I love being plugged into it. That's how I meet so many cool people.
You could be the next Miss Cleo if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be.
I get
so,
it. I wouldn't want to either.
But I'll say this. I think that being a priest has made me actually an initiate. Because your question was being an initiate. It has, I think, made it very hard for me to form bonds with people in a deeper, more spiritual sense, because I have discovered over my time here that a lot of people who are interested in magic, people who are interested in pagan religion, or people who are interested in the occult or things like that, it becomes very obvious that they have this very anti-theistic, anti-initiatory worldview. And I didn't really know that until I started talking to them more post-initiation and realizing, like, oh, you don't really believe in, like, mysticism or divinity or connection through ritual ecstasy. You just kind of want a hobby, or you just want something to do on the side. And so that's been a little challenging sometimes.
Don't you think once you become a high priest, that becomes more in your face?
Yes, 100%.
I definitely feel like I've faced that longer than you guys have, because I've been aware for a while.
Yeah,
but it drives you mad.
And also, what it ends up doing is, how do I word this? You just don't know how to have the conversations anymore because you're doing the work all the time.
You cease to want to.
You don't really I can't really sit and talk with somebody who's like, we're both witches, and their definition of witch is so wildly different that it's like, I don't know how to do that. Blessed
is this a real thing, or is she just saying it weird? That's why I sometimes get the blessed
The blessed by. Yeah,
we gotta remember that. That's going to be a new thing for me. Blessed by.
Wait, who is that?
Kaylin. Blessed
That's
by.
why I sometimes get the blessed by
instead of blessed by.
I love it.
Like a new
I
saying
do too.
now.
I love that.
I love that.
It won't be something we say to each other.
I was long-winded. I was long-winded, so I'll wrap it up very quickly. But no, I think that does come up a lot. There is a differentiation between I'm a priest in a religion and you are a hobbyist, and they get very offended by that. But it's just the truth. I mean, it's just whether it's your religion.
Do
or
they really
it's
get
not.
offended? Do they tell you you're offending?
They tell me I'm an elitist, or that.
Why doesn't anyone ever say that to me?
I don't know.
No one ever says anything like that.
They don't say it to me either, Levi, huh?
That's
wonder why.
Maybe I haven't. Maybe it's my tone.
I think it's because he talks to them. We don't actually talk to them. Levi's like.
I do. I try to. I want to build bonds, but
Yes.
I don't know.
do believe we should be
Good.
priests on the street, but it's hard. Let's give. I think Ellie. Still
Yes,
needs
it's
to
Ellie.
go. Yeah.
It's Ellie.
Sorry, Carie.
Thank you so much, Levi. Blessed be. Thank you.
We lose
Ellie, how do you feel
composure.
about this? How do you feel that being in an initiatory practice, has it been more difficult for you to navigate relationships with non-initiates? This is something else too that I just kind of thought about. Like, do y'all, and I'll kind of add this on for Ellie's real quick. Sometimes when you meet people that aren't Alexandrians, but they're also like magical practitioners, kind of scrolling through that, like, oh, wait, that's oath bound. Like, just like, oh, I can't say this thing or I can't say that thing. But Ellie, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about like navigating conversations and things with non-initiates?
I've actually become
Or just
a
relationships in general?
In general, I've become a lot more wary. I'm well known for being loving and kind, and everybody gets a hug, and I help everybody, and I'm a mentor and guide. I also, I was a strong visual and auditory psychic. So dealing with other humans in general is always, they come towards you, and I do a quick scan, and it's either like a yes, no, or a maybe. Usually it's a no. And then I'm trying to navigate getting around these people I really don't want to talk to too much, or that I feel
Usually it's a no.
want to get something. They want to get some nugget from me. Like, oh, yeah, I won't. So many people I know are probably watching this. I'm sorry, but people.
It's the truth, though.
Like
Like
somebody right now who's just begging to hang out with me, and I'm just like, I don't have time right now. I just don't have time. And they're like, oh, but you spark my creativity and you make me feel better, and it's so rewarding. And I just
You
want
could
to
always go to yoga class.
I just said I in my mind I was like, it's not rewarding for me. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I do this 80 hours a week. Please just leave me alone. Like, I have 4 planets in the 12th house. I'm definitely saying, please leave me alone. But what it has helped me with is discernment. Discernment when I'm with initiates. There is a nice breathing out of thinking, okay, probably this person is also working very hard on their spirituality. They are putting in the time like I am, weekly, daily, sometimes minute by minute.
Absolutely.
And then other people that are kind of like Brian and Levi say are more casual and hobbyist, you can spot that a mile away. And I'm just like, I don't discredit that. I'm just saying I don't have time to help people with that.
If you don't mind, I have like one thing that popped into my head so heavily during this conversation was after my initiation, I actually find myself having a lot more in common with like really devout Christians or really devout Buddhists or really devout Jews.
Yes.
Or like we can talk about religion together. We can talk about our experiences
Absolutely.
of the divine. And like, I don't know, I feel more kinship with them sometimes than I do pagans.
Well,
like,
they're doing the work.
That's because now you need to start forming relationships with other high priesthoods so you can have those conversations.
Yes. I do.
They exist. Get Tracy on
there's
the phone.
few
get
of us,
Thorne
though.
on the phone. Get Rosie on the phone. And
But not
nail her down.
don't worry, I'm not saying like I want to go join the church.
No,
it's
I know what you're saying because it's, quite frankly, I've been through it. And when you first start your own coven, which you haven't just started, it's been over a year now, right? There is a loneliness thing that goes on, and eventually I love conversations with high priesthood.
Yeah.
That's why I call them because it's the only people that you can really relate to on that exact
On that level.
Yeah.
But yes, I get it. If you're talking to somebody, I used to love to talk to Saint Maurice because even though he was a voodoo high priest, basically, and we had completely different religious beliefs on a lot of factors. The devotion was there, the service was there, the teaching was there. So we had enough in common to where I could have a relatable conversation. Somebody who's just like casting spells and lighting black candles, I don't really have a lot in common with them, and I won't discuss my intimate magic with them anyway. So it sort of just becomes instantly boring.
Did it change things with your family and you when you become initiated? No. Internally, did it change anything? I don't think it did for me.
No, because I always felt like an alien in my family.
Yes, very
So my mother was very supportive.
Love aliens.
My mother was always very supportive of me. She dropped me off at my first open SBAT when I was like a teen. So
Your mom is very sweet.
She's always been very supportive. So not with her, but everyone else in my family, I always felt kind of like, not really in this family. Really.
Right.
Somebody dropped me off.
An outsider.
Just dropping me off with my witches.
All right.
Well, thank y'all so much. So I'm going to drift into our next question, which I think will be a fun one for everyone to answer. So since we've kind of been progressing and talking about, as initiates and how we feel about those, and I'm going to start with Levi with this one. Blessed be. How do you feel about oath breaking in magical traditions? Whether it is personal, but especially if someone is very public about it.
I mean,
how do you feel about oath breaking?
Our last Covendom with Michael Carell, he talked a lot about oath breakers, and I think. Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. I think because it's important if you're talking about initiatory craft. I think. I just think it's just an ugly little blasphemy. I mean, it's just so small and awful. It's like breaking. I think a lot of people outside of certain traditions, more than hatred, it's this childish reaction of, if I can't play with it, nobody can play with it, right? Like it's like
that's
I want to like tear something down and destroy it because it doesn't. I think it's evil, but that's never really the real reason. It's always spite. It's always the lowest human emotions that that push oath breakers to do what they do. But also, I think it's one of those things, like I think many of us have been in situations where you have a friend who does something quite unethical, like they become an adulterer or they're or they're a thief or whatever.
Right.
And if you still want to be around those people after they did something so unethical and you don't take them to task in any shape, form, or fashion, I do think it speaks poorly of you in many situations. And if you're these people who like support oath breakers or like continue to give them platforms or whatever, I'm always like, how can you trust them in anything even outside of magic? Like, how can you trust them for a business?
It comes down to that,
Yeah, anything.
The other woman who thinks he's not going to cheat
on
me.
me, right? Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a level of like moral bankruptcy that once it gets accessed, there's no going back from that. And even if it's like a public backpedaling, it's kind of gross to me. Blessed be Levi. Thank you. Brian, next for you, my fabulous high priest. What are your thoughts on oath breaking?
In the ancient world, whether it doesn't even matter what culture you go into, we're talking about sacred oaths versus just your word, which I don't think there's a huge difference in a way, because if you're a liar, you're a liar. Like the old sayings, a man is only as good as his word, things like that. My word is my bond, this truth is truth and lying is lying. And people who lie generally also steal, and they generally also cheat, and they generally, it all seems to go hand in hand because it comes down to deception and that sort of thing. But I think, in the old world, a sacred oath was an oath that it was believed if you broke, there would be divine consequences at some point in time.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I do believe that is true,
Like
and
a lusus.
I think that we don't always get to see it. We may never get to see it, and we always want to see it. Let's face it. When we know someone's done something wrong, we want to see them get theirs.
Get it.
But we don't always get to see it. But I believe it'll happen.
Allie.
How it happens or when it happens, because when it comes to oath breaking from an initiatory standpoint, it's their oath. They asked for that initiation. They asked for this thing, and they took an oath to gods they wanted to connect with. And whether they're still working with those gods, whether they go off, they've done that. That time, that space, and that event has taken place, and it is a written record in their book of life. And there's no erasing it. It's part of their story. So for me personally, I will tell you, I won't associate with someone who's broken a divine oath on purpose. There's a difference between someone making a slip or, something like that, or just being stupid, which happens.
Sure.
Somebody who fully breaks it. And we all know what that would look like. And you don't have to be in a tradition to know what that would look like. For us, it's betrayal of... I love what Doreen Valente said in her book, Witchcraft Tomorrow, in her own little grimoire at back. She has her own little initiation, self-initiation type thing. And dedication, I can't remember what she calls it. I think she coined the word dedication, but I can't really remember. But she says, no one can escape their fate, be it blessing or curse, if they basely betray the trust and confidence that others have placed within them. Oops, sorry. So I think that's just true. I think, you're cheating on your husband or you're cheating on your wife and you're breaking your marriage vows, you're breaking a sacred oath. If your vows said you would,
Correct.
if they said that.
We're talking about consent here, yeah.
Yes.
Real oaths.
If they didn't say that, then that's not true. But in a Christian sense, I believe it does tell you that you have to be chaste. Most other rituals, I don't know if they're in everyone's rituals. So I'd say, be as good as your word, and if your word isn't good, your magic won't be either. Blessed be.
Blessed be. Thank you. Ellie, how do you feel about oath breaking in magical traditions and just oath breaking in general?
Right. It's changed. I've become a lot more aware of it. So it's twofold for me. Internally, I'm practicing more serious consciousness over my being. How am I composed? Am I elegant? Am I well-mannered? Am I listening and having good etiquette? Am I not saying things that are not appropriate, or et cetera, sharing information I shouldn't? So it's made me more self-aware, which I appreciate. But it's also made me more sensitive to others. I have tons of clients, and I have someone who says, well, I've just done a little breakup spell on this guy I like because he's married and I don't think, she's a crappy lady. And I'm just like, oh, so you want to get him for yourself and you're doing a breakup spell. And she's like, yeah, start with that. And immediately I just can't help it. I'm like, well, this poor person is not so trustworthy. And I immediately take offense at that. I'm like, why not just do a love spell for yourself that you find your true, holistic, wonderful love? Why do you have to do something destructive in the first place? So it's made me more sensitive to that. And when I see people,
that's a path to happiness,
right? But
splitting someone else up,
right? It's just made me more sensitive.
It's so weird,
actually, to my own behavior, my own truth telling, and I'm the worst flirt in the world. I'll tell you that. I've definitely.
I think you're really good at it.
Or the best flirt.
Well, and I've stepped into things accidentally, and I just thought, oh, sorry, I didn't know you were married, or I don't know. Sometimes people are married, but I'm just saying, hey, I like you. You're cute. I'm really honest with people, but I'm just really watching more about my own behavior, and then I'm more sensitive to people who are. Oath breaking at a core, like Brian says, it's lying, cheating, and stealing, and those are my three. Cannot do them with other people. No lying, cheating, and stealing.
They're pretty much universal roadmaps to evil.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
well, thank y'all so much.
Yay.
Blessed be.
To you as well.
Thank you. I was very excited about doing these questions. Like I did a little deep dive, and without being on a gummy, which is very rare for me. So anyway, moving on. For the next question, Ellie, I'm going to start with you. So aside from, in our tradition, Alexander tradition, aside from our goddess and God, what other deities are you most drawn to, or have you been most drawn to through the course of your life with your magic, and why?
As a young child, my first love was Egypt and the Egyptian gods. I don't know how I got exposed to them. When I was young, we didn't have television. We went to the library. Like I said, my brother and I had a record player in the hallway where my parents bought records of literature. Like Grimm's fairy tales and Carl Sandburg. That's what we did in the 60s. We listened to records of stories. So for some reason, I got Egyptian, and then I got the Greek and Roman mythology records. And that's where I've lived my whole life. Egypt, Greece, and Rome. They're my gods. They're the ones I know.
And look where you are now.
I love that there's different pantheons. I'm not bothered by different pantheons, and I want to know about them. But I feel like within our tradition, there's enough stuff going on for one lifetime. Definitely. Mm-hmm. And why am I attracted to them? They saved my life when I was a little child. They saved my life. They came to me and rescued me. Some Egyptian god forms. The other thing I'll say is I do believe in that there are consciousness beings in the cosmos besides humans and gods. There's angels and there's elementals and there's ancestors, even though they're dead humans. And so I had contact with those kind of beings early on too, and I was like, this stuff's real. I just have to do this with these things. So for all my life, Egypt, Greece, and Rome. And that's really it. I haven't gone into the Norse or the Celtic. I know that was so popular in the 80s and 90s that everyone was Irish, Scottish, and you're Celtic. I don't mind it. I'm actually genetically Welsh, German, and Scandinavian, so Celtic for sure. But those ancient, not Babylonia either, not the
I love that.
not the Sumerian gods, Egypt, Greece, and Rome. That's my answer.
Thank you. That's my answer. And I heard that as like 5-year-old Ellie, like, that's my answer.
My
That's
answer.
it. Blessed be. Thank you. Brian, aside from the gods in our tradition, what are gods and goddesses that you really responded to or worked with, and why? Like that came to you, or you feel like you have a good relationship with?
Well, one of my fun coin phrases that to get people to think is I always like to remind them that I'm a monotheist. So I believe in a monotheistic goddess, and I believe all goddesses are her. Mm-hmm. So in one sense, the question's a bit irrelevant because I could just say all goddesses.
Yeah.
But that's not really the journey we're on. Me and Levi and Ellie have all discussed how we are more in common Neoplatonists or monastic monotheists. Am I saying that?
Monistic.
Monistic. I always do that wrong. Monistic monotheists. These different terms. We're not hard polytheists. But magically speaking, I'm a lot like Ellie, except for I did have a lot of exposure to Celtic gods because my original witchcraft initiator was very Celtic focused, as was most of the craft in the 90s. Gardnerians still have a strong focus on the Celts, and there is definitely a heritage of it in Alexandria, and Alex was Welsh. Maxine has a house in Wales. My teacher was Welsh, So there's a lot of Celtic influences. I think I got a bit OD'd on it, to be honest with you, at one point in time. But they're very there. And I look at the spirit of the Celtic gods as being a bit like the fairy faith. But we know some of the names of the kings and the queens, But other than that, very classical world. I'm obsessed with the goddess Isis. I'd say she's probably my strongest candidate in a public way. A close competitor would be the goddess Diana. These are probably two of my favorites. And then there's some that are private. I've got a big thing for Athena too. And I don't see Athena as having an overarching witchcraft theme. Right. It's definitely there. Yeah. She casts spells. She did things to people magically. She's associated with bees and snakes and spiders, and she's a goddess of wisdom. But she was also a very city goddess. A civilized goddess. So there's lots of different gods and goddesses I'm drawn to. But the truth of the matter is, I worship the goddess. And the god, to put it in those strict senses. And, in a public sense, I'd say I worship Isis and Serapis, but they go by many names, which they did in the ancient world. They still do today.
Thank you, Brian. Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Levi, what are your thoughts on this?
I tend to use the word God more than anything. I just say, God this, or God, when I was talking to God, or when we invoke God. But I only use female pronouns. I always say she and her. And I enjoy the jarring sensation that gives
to get people to think.
Exactly. I enjoy when I'm like, God is speaking through us all the time, and she really wants to, et cetera, et cetera. Like I use that kind of language a lot. I am probably more obsessively monistic, I think, than a lot of people who identify as witches or pagans. I'm not interested in hard polytheism at all. I think that God manifests in multiple ways. I have a very deep love for Hindu philosophy and the sort of concept of the Brahman, the ultimate, the world soul, the all cosmic, that is refracted through individual experiences, what the Hindus call their Ishtadevata, their sort of beloved deity, which is an image of God that speaks to them, but they understand as a doorway to the ultimate, right? It is God with form, what they call Saguna Brahman, instead of Nirguna Brahman, God with no form, which is too hard to understand sometimes as humans. So I'm really hung up on this idea of like monism. It's all one, in the end. But I'm also human, and so I do use images of God outside of things that my co-host have already talked about.
Can I throw a barb in for you?
Sure.
When you were in Athens, Athena was God.
Yes.
Am I wrong?
Correct. But God, right?
Yeah. In Athens, though, Athena, I mean, the temple of Zeus is below the Parthenon.
The Parthenon, yeah.
Like she's...
It was the same for Hera in
named
Argos.
after her, you know.
But yes, I will say that I do believe that to invoke and name a deity from history is to invoke a particular experience of God. So I do believe that they are different on that level. They are different on some level. You know, Krishna is not the same as Kali, but they are, right? So in my own personal life, I will say I love Diana and Isis and all the Greco-Roman and Egyptian gods that, you know, my co-hosts have talked about. But I have a deep love of Kali and of Shakti Hinduism and of the images of Devi, that particularly that come out of Bengal. That's really important to me, that sort of Bengali goddess devotionalism that's incredibly
for you.
I think a good point to make there for Levi, and I'm glad to hear him say this, because we as priesthoods of the mystery traditions, we have to continue the walk of our elders. And there came a point when people stopped trying to do that because they're afraid of being accused of being cultural appropriators, which has nothing to, like, Levi's not trying to be like, I'm
Bengali, right?
Yeah, no, he's not trying to do that, but he can connect with Kali or whatever like that. You know, most people forget Alex Sanders was obsessed with the Aztec gods.
Yes, he was.
You know, and so there's certain
absolutely.
times, so I don't limit myself to what other people's ideas are. I think I just happen to gravitate more towards my, you know, my experiences of being European and Egyptian based on what I've been exposed to and that cultural connection. But when I went to Mexico, I was thinking of the gods there and trying to figure where it was the Mayan moon goddess whose name I can't remember, because I started out kind of thinking of I'm gonna say it wrong, Quetzalcoatl.
Quetzalcoatl?
No,
Quetzalcoatl.
No, Quetzalcoatl is different than that one.
Oh, Quetzalcoatl, the mother goddess.
Yes, but that's Aztec.
Yeah.
And we weren't in Aztec land, we were in Mayan land. So then I researched her, and it made more sense because the Mayan moon goddess absolutely 100% fits the archetype of the witch's goddess. The Aztecs, it doesn't really, because they're a little bit more. It's a bit different, you know.
They're really into blood sacrifice.
Yes, but yes, I thought that, and we went into those water caves and where the bats are, and that was sacred to her. So at night she was down there, and in day she was the moon, or at night she was the moon, and day she was down there. It was kind of like being a vampire, I guess. Anyway, off course, but sorry. Yeah.
Oh, I was also going to say though, I don't think there's anything wrong with what I would call like particular devotionalism. Like, for example, I will share something that's kind of, I don't talk a ton about. I've mentioned it on Covendom, but I have a deep personal devotion to Hera, to the goddess Hera, and particularly Hera, not like some sort of, you know, Juno Sospita kind of greatness, but Hera, the Greek Hera. And there's a shrine to her in my temple, and it's very dear to me. And the beautiful Ellie Barnes' incredible mother painted in
Diana Barnes.
Diana Barnes.
Yes, Diana, if you watch this, I noticed Levi's painting was bigger than the one.
She painted me the most incredible image.
Oh, Diana!
She said, "Tell Brian I'm going to do Brian some more
veiled
things."
with the imperial scepter. But no, I have a deep devotion to her. That kind of defies explanation because she's not somebody I would have ever picked or that would be associated with me. But I have an incredible connection. Yeah, I have an incredible connection to her. So yeah, that's an individual image.
And that's a beautiful painting. I saw it and I was like, it's mine now.
It's a very beautiful painting. But no, images of Hera sparked something in me, and I don't know why. But her stories sparked something in me. Her prayers, her epithets.
Well, some people believe she's tied to the pre-European gods, the older.
Yeah, that she's the older mother goddess. Yeah.
Same with Demeter. Yeah.
So I want to ask this real quick too. So we're all saying that we have a monotheistic God head. That is male and female.
In a sense.
You know, and then we're saying
I think Neoplatonism sort of from iambics is the better way of phrasing it, because I know Levi when I say Neoplatonism, he has a Rolodex like this going, and I realize it's bigger than that.
Literally.
Yes, but we're talking more about like the later works of iambics.
Yeah, he's right. Iamblichus is the big one for us.
Divine hierarchy. So it's the idea basically, and this is in our stuff without saying too much, but it's the idea that there's a source and that everything else is emanations of them. And our first emanations of the god and the goddess. You can get that in ancient Egypt though with Atum,
Kabbalah.
Atum or a moon birthing all the other gods, and that the original, a tomb or a moon or whatever it was called, was not male or female.
Right.
It was a,
Right.
The nondescript, yeah.
sometimes, and later that became Ra, kind of. Yeah.
But I'm saying
Okay.
we kind of do both. We're definitely, I think all three of us are totally linked into the idea of the one source. And I do certain work and conversation just with that one source. But my creative side really wants to be friends with
We
the
need
different
them.
gods. And they
the
have,
source, we could,
right?
you know, it is called the creator sometimes because the source is the one that gave us this language. This earth, this planet has that is the language. If you're just going to study nature and make your entire religion about nature, that's a part of the story right there.
Right.
The
Speciation.
biological process for most species, including plants on this earth, have a male and female. So that story was put in place by whatever it is,
Right.
the formula.
No, I think, yeah, no, I agree with Ellie. I think
and
that's
we know, but we
absolutely true.
comfortably move between the two,
Yeah.
particular
Yes.
individual deities.
I don't live there
for certain
thinking
reasons.
of the source. I think of the god and the goddess
Yeah, yeah.
and different emanations.
Yeah.
and-
We kind of have to.
yeah. It's art. It's beauty.
That's a great question. I love
It
it.
is. Absolutely. Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Has to be.
I have to share this with y'all real quick because one of my friends texted me. She's like, what are you drinking? So I had to say, I'm having some rosé. That's for Ellie and Brian. And then I also have an enormous Diet Coke for Levi. Because she's like, what are you doing? I keep seeing you do something with a straw. And I was like, I've got my Diet Coke and my rosé. Anyway, thank y'all so much. Blessed be. So I've got a few more for y'all. And this one I'd like to start with Brian.
What number are we on now?
So Brian,
Carie, what number?
we are on, this is the fifth one.
All right, perfect. We're making good.
Or sixth one. This is the sixth one.
Oh, we're doing good.
Or fifth or sixth.
All right. All right, shoot,
I'm
I'm
like,
ready.
Either way,
I've got this page full. And but Brian, I'd love to start with you on this one. Blessed be.
That's good.
And everyone knows, like, Brian is my teacher and my high priest, and Ellie's my high priestess, and Levi is a high priest and dear friend of mine. And I'm just very honored to be asking all these questions and doing this with y'all. Anyway, so Brian, as you have ascended into high priesthood, what are some of the sacrifices that you have made? Like, as your religion and your experiences are going here, like in your personal life, or just what are some of the sacrifices that you've made on this journey of ascension into high priesthood and being a high priest?
Sanity.
Well, the first thing I would
I'm
say.
answering for Brian.
Yeah, well, I was actually going to say sanity, but the first thing I'd say is obviously you're sacrificing your personal time.
I thought you said vanity.
No. Sanity.
Obviously, you are sacrificing your personal time, right? And we all do that. Every person up here sacrifices, we love what we do, so I hate to call it a sacrifice, but there are times when you're like, I'd rather just sit in my jammies, there are times, and we always are glad we did go forward afterwards. But so your personal time, your sanity, what else is sacrificing? I think that's it.
Or
really.
like trials, things that have
trials.
things that have happened.
I think my biggest
Trials,
trial
tribulations,
would be
things like that maybe would be better.
the internet. My trial. I think in a lot of ways, even though the internet.
It's longer than I remembered. I apologize.
I think that I know between Ellie and Levi, I'm jarred with this question. I'm like, I don't know what's happening. I think it's really, this is the challenge right here. This is it right here.
You're the challenge.
I think it's, back in the day, witches have always been a quarrelsome lot. There's always been problems. There's always been oath breakers. There's always been fallouts. There's always been things like that. But you didn't have to deal with them once you removed them from your personal space, because witchcraft happens in people's private homes, and so you're not going to really have to deal with them in the long run in most cases, unless they become famous and get in papers and just don't like seeing them, But I think in reality, the most difficult challenge the whole craft faces is ego, and the internet brings out the worst in people, whether they're witches or anything else. I understand it has its benefits as well. Education, people being able to connect with loved ones from afar, and so blessings and veins. But as far as for the craft, I think at this point, I participate in it so that there is some positivity out there, and it's not all quite horrible, but I think for the most part it's horrible. So I'd say navigating that and having to navigate it with your students, because you have to say, I really don't want you in all this garbage, and this is why.
Yeah.
And you don't want to seem like you're controlling, but they've asked for training. And the last thing
Of
you
course.
want them to stare at is unbecoming priesthood hanging their asses out all over the web, bashing people and bashing each other as a hobby.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd say those are the three things. Mostly it's Ellie and Levi.
Yeah,
He
naturally.
loves us.
Ellie and Levi,
What did I
valid,
used to call you
blessed be.
guys? Like,
Lily and Levi.
Levi, I'm going
I
to
used to
field
mix
this
your
question
name up.
to
I
you
can't
next.
remember how I did
As
it.
Sure.
you ascended into high priesthood, what are some of the
I love
sacrifices
the word ascended.
that you have
by the
made,
way.
or just
Ascended.
Ascended.
yeah, ascended? I thought y'all would like that. Ascended.
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 I agree with what Brian said. You do sacrifice time and stuff. I mean, I have to have a home. I have to have a home that can withstand a temple. I have to have people in my home. I have to prepare classes and buy candles and create, which actually my students are very good about bringing offerings and things. They're wonderful about that. But I do have to, sacrifice a lot of time and effort into this, even when my life is not going well. So that is a sacrifice, right? It's a huge sacrifice that, even though you're going through something difficult, your students are not going through that experience, and you still owe them the experience of Circle. And that's very painful sometimes. I would say the biggest sacrifice I made is, I don't believe that the higher degrees of witchcraft imbue special, how do I word this carefully? The higher degrees of witchcraft, in my opinion, as a high priest, are almost burdensome because they are really oaths of teaching. They are oaths and connections to the tradition that give you extra responsibility, and that I think bear with them a certain weight. And I think I now bear that weight. So I do have to think carefully about what I do, and keeping the gods alive, which they'll live regardless, but serving at their altar and teaching from that altar is difficult. It's very difficult sometimes. And I think it is a more serious sort of commitment that sometimes can feel scary, because once you've plugged into it, I don't think you can unplug. I mean, you can leave all you want, but
You can check out
You can check
anytime
out, but
you
you
like.
can't
You
really.
can never leave.
Like the hotel, the Hotel California.
it's like
And we do check out from time
Thank you
to
so
time.
much.
So I feel that way. Yeah.
Yes, that's a big-
Vacation.
Thank you so much, Levi. Blessed be. Ellie, what are your thoughts on this? So you've ascended as a high priestess and taken on more of the mantle of teaching and things like that.
It's
What are some of the sacrifices that you feel that you had to do?
It's really similar to Levi. It's like a schism within myself. When the more you work in a tradition and the more you take on through initiation, I crave to just do the work myself in my own little temple and just make my connections and do my devotions and my prayer. But I'm pulled strongly to the external all the time. The coven, the people that are interested in learning, the clients. And it's a very strong split of myself, of wanting to be private, internal, sacred, and then having to turn around and, as Levi said, really show up in a great way, no matter what my internal structure is doing. I have to be there energetically for the group.
Ellie
and for
shows
my
up and
clients.
she's like, "Blessed be."
Blessed be.
Inside her head, it's kill.
Kill. So that's my struggle. I wish that could get a little bit easier. But the time, too, that we spend on it is
Kill
people
all
don't
humans.
realize they have a real fantasy mind about what we all do. Hours and hours and hours of work every
It
week.
is a lot of time commitment. And, the one thing I want to say, and I know I can speak for these two, we do love it.
We do
so
love
it's deeply more rewarding. But if the question is burdens, I have to think, personal time and Shivi, Levi, Ellie, Levi, these two, they're my burdens, really.
We are forever and always.
It could be worse.
I'm sorry. Did you just say Shivi? Because that might stick in my head.
Shivi.
I will see you.
All right. Well, I love those answers, y'all.
That could be like the new Shiro. Shiva.
Shiva. I'm not.
Shivi.
very
Shiva.
quirky.
Shiva.
Good questions, though, Ellie.
Yeah.
Or-
Carrie and Ellie.
Kirai.
Kirai. Kelly.
Thanks,
your-
Bobby.
I love too that I'm just floating above Ellie's head. It makes me
You
really
are.
happy. It's like with little,
Yep.
I'm a projector screen coming out of her head. I'm into it. Okay, so I've got a couple more.
we have time.
If we have time,
We
but
do.
the next one,
We have time
I
probably
thought,
for one more, and then we need to check in for questions. So we can get callers.
okay, bear with me for one, because they're both really good. Okay, okay, now I'm going to do this one. So, and I'm going to start this one. I'm going to start this one with Ellie. Ellie, blessed be, beautiful high priestess. What do you want to be remembered for magically? Like, what do you want to be your legacy?
Wow, magically. I don't have any idea. I just want to be fabulous, and I want everyone to love me, and I want to matter a lot while I'm here. You
already do.
One of my issues is, like, I've told Brian about this kind of imposter syndrome or self-esteem issues, and I just think, how can I do this? How can I show up? These are such big obligations. I don't feel qualified. So I just want to be fabulous and fantastic and gorgeous and brilliant, and everyone loves me.
Check.
On the whole planet. That's what I want. I want everyone on the whole planet to love me. That's what I want.
Start small, everybody.
I know. So just a few small steps. I love it. Okay,
Yeah,
I love it.
I
All right,
love to be known as a
Brian,
healer, as a
what
healer.
do you want to be remembered for? Oh, sorry.
For crushing my enemies,
Oh.
having them been driven before me, and the lamentations of their women.
Ooh, the wailing.
So Tuesday, what we do every week. Cool. Okay.
I think, I'll be happy to repeat the words of my teacher. I hope I'm remembered as a good teacher. That's what I hope I'm remembered for.
You are.
Yeah.
You are an incredible teacher.
I'm still alive.
Blessed be.
Save it for later.
Levi,
I hope.
wonderful Levi Rowland. What do you want to be remembered for magically, and as your legacy?
I hope I'm remembered as somebody who used their voice in this community to speak for goddess worship.
Oh,
That is beautiful. Blessed be.
We probably have
So-
time for your second one because we gave short answers.
Well, we only have
Okay, perfect. Because this one's actually real quick, and
let me put
it's
this
fine.
out here just to get prepped. So right after this last question, we want to take callers, and we love to get callers.
call us.
So the number is 309 Goddess. So 309
Goddess.
Goddess. It's on the screen. If you call while this question's being answered, we'll have you in the queue. All right. Thanks so much. All
Love
right,
it.
shoot.
So this last question, y'all, I thought this would just kind of be a little fun one. So for this one, I'm going to start with Levi, and then Ellie, and then finish out with Brian. So Levi, starting with you, blessed be. What public figure, whether it's an artist, activist, author, actor, living or dead, would you love to initiate into Alexandrian witchcraft, and why?
Oh, that is a
What's
fun question.
the one person?
Living or
That's why I was like, this is so fun.
living or dead.
Oh God.
Living or dead, and again, it could be anybody, like author, artist, activist, actor, just anyone, living or dead, and one person that you would love to be an Alexandrian initiate.
Cleopatra.
You would specifically love to initiate.
Cleopatra Ptolemy.
Like,
She already was.
Cleopatra the
technically,
Seventh.
wasn't
No,
Yes.
I think this would be a more fun question if we stay away from kings and queens and stuff, because I know that's the answer you want to give because of power and all that. But if we're talking because I think it's more fun to think in terms of celebrities. Or
No, I just really genuinely want to know. Yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody have one? I'm gonna have to think for a second.
I know exactly who I want to
I
initiate.
think I'm going to take
into
Bette Midler.
Alexandrian
I'm going to take
Bette
Bette
Midler.
Midler. That's who I'll take.
Should be great.
Because she covers
Ritual
all
voice.
the bases.
Okay.
Ellie, who were you gonna?
I love it. Okay, so
So
Brian's got Bette Midler. Ellie Bird, what you got?
Jennifer Coolidge. I want Jennifer Coolidge.
he was
I
supposed
want
to be
Jennifer Coolidge.
last.
She's here. Somebody. Yes, I know, but I got excited.
Brian, I have told you I have a network to Jennifer Coolidge, so we're going to talk about
If I
that.
can't get her, Bette
Ellie,
Midler.
who did you say?
I have followed this guy on Instagram, and he owns a business called Haas Garden Tools. I think he's in Georgia, but he has
Go
a
on.
organic gardening
I don't
business.
think we're allowed to initiate Germans.
Oh yes, we are. And
Germans
so
are completely off limits
he
since World War II.
wears overalls and like leather work shoes and a hat, and I am crazy about him, and I'm
so into this.
I want to see him without his clothes on in his garden so bad, and I want to initiate him outside. I want to see him outside.
Just let her
He's a fabulous nature worker. I mean, he's a goddess worshiper. He doesn't ever talk religion.
But is he German?
Ellie, I'm just twirling my hair. I'm like, can we just, yes,
He's
let's
just
go
like
on.
It's a German word, isn't it? Hoss?
I don't know.
HOSS.
Oh, yes,
I don't know, but he, I'm German.
Like Hoss.
I'm just crazy about that guy. That's
Germans
who I
can't
want.
be in British craft. That's like
I'm German. Why can't I be in British craft?
Because of World War II.
You are.
We're all the same damn people. We just went over. Shoot, the Germans went over
What
like
just
hundreds
happened?
of times,
Okay.
and then they were still,
No. I don't know who
Anglia.
Like Levi, you're sitting, you're there. What's happening?
England is German.
Nothing good.
Is England German? It is German.
They're Anglo-Saxon, yes, the same.
It's England German.
They are. It is. It's the
England
same
is German.
people.
England is a mix
I mean,
of
they politically divided before World War One.
Frisians and Celts and Anglo-Saxons and Romans and Vikings.
And Danes.
So many people.
But after World
Scandinavians.
War II, they couldn't let any
my.
Germans in. See?
Part of me wants to say Taylor Swift because I think she has evil powers. I think she already belongs to Satan. So, I don't think you can pick her. I don't actually like her
pretty,
music.
though.
I just think she has power. I think she could raise an army if she wanted to.
The other one I want's Harvey Keitel. He's an actor.
What
about Carie
What the hell is she picking?
Yes.
What about Carie Perry?
What?
Carie Perry?
Katy Perry.
Yeah, but a friend of ours called her
Carie Perry.
She came into her shop and she said, "Hello, Carie Perry." She didn't know she didn't know.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Let's be honest. I would probably pick some bougie author. It's like I'm such a.
You'd pick somebody nobody knows.
I know.
who they
I'd
are.
pick somebody some obscure author that I liked or whatever. I'm
Yeah,
so
me too. I
boring.
like obscure.
I'm here for it.
No, you'd absolutely initiate Taylor Swift. You'd be
Well, I think
'Cause she
I
can
think the
accomplish
whole
things.
Gardner Haas person, that's pretty obscure. I'm into it.
Who would you initiate, Carrie? Anybody that you could
Oh,
in the world. See, this is how the tables turn. Yes.
No, I'm here for it. You know who I would think would be a great Alexandrian? Stanley Tucci.
Who's that?
That's a good choice.
Who's that?
I'm gonna give it to you.
Thank you, Levi. You would know him if you saw him. He is a character actor, really intense,
He was the designer.
very
of the
devoted,
Devil's Prada, bald gay guy.
just very passionate.
I'd initiate
He was the
her
first
if she
person that
was-
popped up. Stanley
she wasn't
Tucci
the actress, if she was
would
just
be
the-
an incredible Alexandrian.
Meryl
associate.
Streep. What about Meryl Streep?
Oh, she'd be good.
Yeah, but I'd want the character in Devil's
Miranda
Prada.
Priestley.
Yeah, I'd initiate Miranda Priestley.
Oh, thank you, because he was in
It would
that.
be cool to see actors
Definitely.
and
Ooh,
actresses,
Stanley
though,
Tucci.
because there
I
is
could
a
see her.
theatrical side to
I'd
it.
like you to call the quarter. Please do it oh so slowly. Move at your regular glacial pace.
No.
I do like
You
your,
know how that
your
thrills
robe
me.
today.
Dolly Parton.
I'm assuming you got it off your bed.
Yes, I love
Oh,
Dolly Parton.
Dolly Parton would be
wow,
amazing,
thank
but can you imagine that? There's so many wonderful ways I could go with Dolly Parton as an initiative.
Is this like more volume per alcohol? Is that why you call this the heavyweight one?
No, it's just not.
Also,
Oh, only 90 calories a glass. Ha 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 ha. Okay.
Wine
Wait,
doesn't.
what is
Your body. Alexandrians don't actually absorb calories from wine.
No, it's just what we're showing that I'm reading the thing.
That's like a
Some
proven
restrictions
fact.
may apply.
Well, you know how the Christians turn it into blood. We turn it into power.
I love that.
So, while we wait for Collins, we do have some questions in the chat that I thought I could throw out to everyone.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Don't we have chat questions too?
So we had one earlier that I wanted
Somebody
to
call,
ask.
or I'll think you're all scared and weak.
Scaredy cat.
309 goddess.
Shane asked when we were talking about oath breaking, what does that include when people are trying to verify if someone is legitimate, like to try to find out their lineage?
That depends, because in the craft, I think people very much forget. Somebody was saying something about seekers in these groups. In these groups, it's not the seekers talking. I've run seeker groups. It's the initiates talking. The seekers barely say anything. So, sorry, side note there. But as far as rephrase the question one more time for me.
What, we were talking about oath breaking, and what about when you're trying to validate somebody's credentials?
If you're trying to validate someone's credentials, you're not breaking any oaths. Where you could run into legitimate problems is if there's a secret initiate involved, right? So the answer, I can't tell you, doesn't mean you should believe them, but it could occur if somebody's... So for instance, let's say Ellie was my initiator, but she was completely a secret initiate, and I did not have her permission to tell anyone. That could run into problems. But quite frankly, if you can't get a vouch, you can't trust the people. So if something's that secret, you just probably should go somewhere else, in my frankness. And in the craft, I've never encountered anyone who wouldn't internally give a vouch.
Yes, agreed.
But to an
Right.
outsider, they may not tell you their whole lineage, because if they've got secret people, but they should be able to tell you roundabouts where they came from, and you should be able to get another initiate to vouch
Yeah,
for them.
right.
Yes.
You know, like they shouldn't just be alone with some mysterious story. You know, somebody should say, yes, this is.
We do
what
have a
we're-"
call.
Oh, good.
I thought you'd be happy.
Ooh.
I think you'll recognize it. Hi, is this Shelby?
Yes, Levi, blessed be. Hi, Brian,
Blessed
Ellie.
be.
Blessed be
Everybody.
Toby.
Shelbadiah.
Oh, I just get it, everybody. I just get it,
I actually
everybody.
came
Okay.
up with a new name for you. I'm starting to call you Sherbert.
Sherbert. I love that.
Yes, it's
Look how
Toby.
excited Ellie is. I'm
Pineapple
sorry, Shelby.
sherbet. Ooh,
Blessed be
Shelby.
Shelby.
I got some good days ahead for you.
What
and
is
me.
your question, Mr. Shelby?
Pineapple sherbet?
So my question is it's only for Brian, Levi, and Ellie, but Carie, if you have an answer, you can do it as well.
Oh, I can do it as
Out
well.
of-
Oh, thank you,
for
Shelby.
establishing the rules for us.
Thank you so much, Shelby.
Out of all of the initiations and initiates that you've been around and been a part of, what was like one biggest indicator of like, yes, I want this person?
Oh, when somebody's seeking initiation.
Yes.
I ask the gods to decide about it. I do have tendencies to like people or not, but I really put that on the back burner. And I ask about their sincerity, their commitment, whether I think they're stable and well enough to make a commitment. And then I ask the gods to look at them and say, point us in the right direction with this person.
I think I'd have to just sum it up as, in my journey of learning, I think that, because I'm still learning, right, I've had pretty good instinctual accuracy, but there have been mistakes. It happens. So I'd have to say sincerity, number one,
Yep.
stability,
Yep.
and power, intelligence, and then the most important thing is, am I going to want to be around this person on a continual basis?
That's about that Haas garden tool
because
guy. I want to be around him.
whoever I'm bringing in or whoever
Ellie.
Ellie's bringing in
Yep.
on our coven, we know we're going to see them every week. So if it's somebody I don't want to see every week, then no. Anyway.
Mine would be sincere devotion and like
Yeah,
a desire
yeah.
to be transformed, not a desire to learn about magic, quote unquote. I'm reminded of
That's a big red
Need
flag.
to be
for me.
initiated, yeah.
my life took a different turn, but I almost went to school for library science, and I didn't. But I was told one time by a librarian, the thing that makes her throw a resume in the trash is when it says, "I want this job because I love to read." Right?
Because that's not what the job
That's
is.
not what the job is. And it's also not what, and of course you love to read. Like, it'd be weird if you didn't. So when people are like, I just like magic, I'm like, well, yeah. Like,
One
I
of
mean,
our red flags in the witch stores are, I want to work here because I think it would be fun.
yes, like it's a
It's
red
like,
flag,
it's
right?
standing on your feet for
a
8
job,
hours. It's not
right?
fun.
But I
It's
think-
not fun.
I want people who come to me and they're like, look, I love magic, I do magic, whatever, but I'm looking to be changed in some way.
Transformation.
Transformed. And the second thing I'll say is, and this is a more mundane one, so that's my high-end answer, Shelby. My high-end answer is like, they want to be transformed. They want a transformative, ecstatic experience, a religious experience. The more mundane answer is that they keep pestering me.
Well, yes.
Like, I want to be bothered.
Persistent.
Persistence.
There are
is
so many
important.
words you can put into this, but yeah, persistence too.
Persistence is huge because
You want them to want it.
Yes.
The way an obsessed lover wants you.
the way that a mystic should want God.
Where someone just keeps trying to date you and keeps trying until you finally just give in, and then
Which is a form of abuse
and
in
then
real
you
life,
marry them in a year, and that happens.
Okay.
But
But you know how terrifying it is. Shelby Shelby, you know how terrifying it
This
is.
is taking a turn.
But to show up and even ask, even to
I
show
love how you called
interest.
my husband abusive. That's literally how he got me. Persistence.
No,
Persistence.
I didn't
Yes, it
mean
is.
Christian.
But I think you.
His love is abusive.
No, it's
Sorry. Love is a
I don't know what I was going to say. Something great. I forgot.
No, you know I
Something-
you. I love you, Ellie.
No, the terror
Of that, Ellie, we
asking.
have no doubt.
The terror
Something
for
brilliant.
asking, to even have the bravery to show up to say, and I'm going to answer to Shelby, who was adorable as he kept sweeping around the circle
Shelbert.
with his broom, and he was like, well, and I'm trying to, and I really love this, and I'm like, yes, and Shelby, how terrifying it was. I love that when people finally can show up and say, I want to be transformed. I want to do this.
I also-
Will you accept me? It's beautiful.
Yes, it's gorgeous.
It's beautiful.
And I'll say though, there is an unfortunate thing that's very popular in culture right now, in American culture, which is that nonchalance is social capital. And so if someone is like
I
really
don't play with nonchalant.
What is, I don't get that.
like it's,
Maybe I might.
maybe
want
we'll
to-
see. I think
I'll
about, you know,
think about.
Oh
it.
God,
Yeah,
no!
it's boring.
No,
One
shoot
of
them
the-
right in the foot. Go
Boring.
quickest ways for me to just cut somebody out of I will never initiate this person or have them initiated by a priestess is when they say something when it's very palpable that they want me to chase them.
Yeah,
Yes, that doesn't happen.
And I'm
Never
like, oh no,
happening.
no.
That
Like,
never happening.
We just don't. We're not
No,
Christians.
don't have time for that. No.
You know, I'm not here to convert.
Some
you.
of my best initiates were practically stalkers.
because they want
And you
it.
know who you are.
Brian, I can hear you. I can still hear.
I'm right here, ma'am.
I'm right here, Brian.
Well, persistence is important.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Shelby,
It's a job
It is.
too, to anything in life.
I know you're still here, Shelby.
Sorry.
Was that your only question?
Yes,
Shelby.
yes, that was my only
Pineapple
question.
sherbet.
Well,
Pineapple
thank
be
you for
everyone.
calling.
Shelby, you blessed angel.
Blessed be.
You blessed angel.
Everyone wants a little pineapple sherbet once in a while.
Well,
Ellie
he's too
came up
he's
with
too young for me. I'm
What a
sorry.
stroke.
What's happening?
I still want that Haas. I still
Do you
want that
smell
Haas
toast?
garden tool guy.
You smelled it. She might.
Do both of you smell?
Shelby's
Shelby
very
smells
sweet
it.
parents came to my. I love them, Carie and Tank. They
They were
came
really
to
sweet.
my Hexfest class, and they were just so cool. They were so
Adorable.
We have
fun.
another
And you meet his
question.
parents, and then you get. Well, Shelby's as sweet as he is.
He's
Yeah.
a sweetie pie.
We did have one more question that I thought
Please
was good.
put-
One of them was, how do you manage disappointment when a teacher becomes untrustworthy?
Oh,
Now, I've never had to deal with that.
I've never encountered that.
Yeah.
Not with the teacher.
Same.
I've never encountered that in craft.
But
Yeah.
I think a deeper
No,
question
me
would be
neither.
where we are high priesthood, you know, and you know, Carie, you're a revered elder in the New Orleans Covenant. We've all been, you know, doing
Oh,
this for
thank
a
you.
while.
I'm like auntie.
What
Blessed
would
be.
you
Thank you.
recommend
I appreciate
to someone?
that.
Let's say somebody was in a coven of an initiatory line.
if you
that
can't
was
trust your
covenant.
teacher, you need a new teacher.
That's what I'm saying. What would you say to that person?
Valid.
I would say if you don't trust them, it's not a good relationship.
Yeah.
You know, so it doesn't even matter to me why you don't trust them. It's just not because when you're looking at because different people might have, you're not going to jive with everyone. You know, there are people I could trigger in 2 seconds because of just the way that I'm blunt and comfortable speaking my mind. You know, and I don't get approached by those people, so I don't have to worry about it. But in that sense, there are people that wouldn't be right for my coven. They wouldn't be right for me. I wouldn't be the right teacher for them because I'm not going to be as gentle as they might like. So, but yeah, I would say if you don't trust them, and vice versa, if you don't trust your student, you should get rid of them. Don't make the mistake of courting that out. You can't court distrust.
no, and
You
that's
can't-
separate from personality.
true.
They
you
may not
can't,
have your
fix
cup of
it,
tea, but
So yes, if distrust, real distrust, enters into that relationship, it should be voided, in my opinion.
I agree with that.
I think
Absolutely.
I might add that it can be very frustrating for seekers sometimes when they are looking for initiatory craft and there is a limited amount of options. And there might be like one coven in your whole state and it might be a very negative experience. What I want to say is this. I don't think there's any other spiritual path that has such, how would I word this? I want to be careful in what I say. I don't want to denigrate the fact that I understand that it's hard sometimes to travel, that it's financially burdensome, that it is very difficult to go to other
If you want to be a
states.
doctor.
But if you wanted to do anything else of value in your life that required that, would you make that trek? Would you make that sacrifice to find that teacher?
Move, change jobs.
Exactly. And I think a lot of modern people
Absolutely.
are just not willing to do that. And I find that off-putting, frankly.
Because they put it, this religion, although it is global in the priesthood, Gardnerian Alexandrian, it's still small in comparison to organized religions. But people in America, and I'm just going to speak about us Americans right now, we have a Christian mindset to where there, where religion is a church you can go to. On Sunday, you can join and you can get your worship and whatever fellowship and community you get from that. That's not how witchcraft works. First and foremost, witchcraft isn't a community. Witchcraft is a coven, the coven you belong to. The broader community doesn't really exist outside of moments. There's a broader priesthood that exists. That is not a community. You cannot take a priesthood that operates in cloisters and call it a community. It's not a community. It has its bigger umbrella. It has its bigger things and its communications, its grand sabbats, high priesthood that keep in touch to keep this thing alive, pure, and all that. But it's not like that. And so we even get people coming to us who they're looking for that same sense they get from Christianity. I want to worship the goddess. I want to worship the old gods. I want to be in a community, and that's not going to ever work out. And we get that a lot. Like I don't even take it. Like I don't.
They
take
need a
it
tribe.
seriously.
They need friends in a tribe.
they want people.
And that's what they're really looking for. And don't forget, Christianity accepts everyone.
Yeah,
That was one of my early
mostly.
complaints. I was just like, gosh, every
Wait, there's one for this.
knucklehead is here.
Where is it? Oh my God. I'm killing the moment.
Christianity accepts everyone.
Christmas is ruined. Thanks, Levi. It's good.
How quaint. Even the rabble.
The rabble. I have something I want to add, kind of touching on what you've all said, because I'm an elder in our tradition. I'm not high priesthood, and one of the reasons that I was drawn to Alexandrian witchcraft and kind of what y'all were talking about of just little things when you were younger that you liked and responded to that kind of led you on this path. Like I loved the idea of working with a coven and working with people magically, but I never found it. And then people that I would meet, like I know Brian will appreciate this story. Actually, y'all all know this story, but like years ago, like a pagan festival. I mean, this is like when I was 19, 20, so it's been a minute.
Hello.
A guy, like a guy coming up to me and telling me that he wanted to initiate. It was so fucking creepy and weird. And I was a solitary practitioner for long, and then living in New Orleans, and it was really like meeting Brian and having these conversations, because I always knew what Alexandrian witchcraft was, but then when we met, and it was clicked with him and hit it off, and then we formed this coven, and with Christine Stevens, who's also an amazing high priestess in our tradition and was a high priestess in our coven for a long time. Just having these relationships with people that you deeply trust. And like Levi, when we were coven mates together, it just going every week, and then you being a high priest, and now like Ellie being my high priestess, like when we meet in our tradition, like it's a safe space, but it's also like, it's not social time. We're here to worship. We're here to hold ourselves accountable, to take responsibility. And it just, it's definitely not for everybody, and it's definitely not for the faint of heart, but I couldn't imagine being anything else. Like it's such a part of my soul. And a lot of that is because of high priesthood, like you all, like when people, new initiates and postulants or whatever meet y'all, like that's what pulls people in. So it's a huge tribute to your teachings and what y'all do and what you bring to the table. Like that's what draws people in.
Blessed be.
So I'm incredibly thankful for all three of you, and like I'm very, very thankful, very blessed.
So if we don't have another call, I have something I want to bring up that I almost.
You're all batshit crazy, but I love you all. Sorry, blessed be.
Most people think of me as very well adjusted.
I know it's true.
One of the things I was going to bring in the news, and I'm not naming any names because I actually don't know the names, but I've seen this a couple of times, and I think it's important to say it here because it happened because of us. It happened because of this show. It happened because of shows like this. It happened because Alexandrian witchcraft is still on a high end of relevance in this conversation of witchcraft, right? So I don't know if it's a different show or not. I think it's a different show, and they had a short. And it's literally a short of this little chubby woman dressed in a Halloween witch costume. Like, she's literally wearing, like, I mean, and I'm not, you guys have all seen me in my pointy hat in Halloween. That thing's leather. It's thousands of dollars. This was a dollar store Halloween costume. Mm-hmm. And her and some man and a couple other people, and they all looked like people I wouldn't want to hang out with, number one. They didn't look fun. But the entire little short was just them making fun of Alexanders.
Oh, I've seen this.
I've
seen this.
And I think, do you not... one of them says, is there anything good to say about Alexanders? And they're like, no. I looked him up, and he was a man. He was a real man. I'm like, number one, that's not bad. It's also very untrue.
Yeah, he was quite a queen.
I mean, he was gay, or at least high-end bisexual. But
high-end bisexual.
I've never heard
that.
Elegant. High-end bisexual.
That needs to be a clothing line.
The accuracy.
But the point of it is that
high-end bisexual by
this
Chanel.
woman is trying to represent witchcraft in a Halloween like a bad Halloween costume.
Dollar General.
And she's going to trash one of the greatest elders the craft has ever had with no real knowledge about anything about the craft, because you wouldn't be doing it if you did. Like, you wouldn't be sitting there in your dumpy little costume even talking about witchcraft if it wasn't for Alexander.
That's correct, Miranda.
So there's good number one. I
100%.
I really revile this. Almost made the news, but I really revile it when anyone trashes any of the elders, because we owe all of them so much. Doesn't mean we don't have opinions. I think Alex could be a naughty boy.
Of course.
I think Doreen Valente had daddy issues, but I think it doesn't take away from the fact that she was a brilliant ritualist and a brilliant poet and a occult academic, really. She contributed so much to the craft with her work. Her daddy issues are really irrelevant to the story, So everyone's human. They all have problems. I find if you're going to trash the witchcraft elders, you should probably just go away and not be on TV, because they just looked. I felt, Levi, you back it up, because I don't know who these people are, and I'm glad I don't know. They looked poorly to me.
Ooh, poorly.
I think it comes off very poorly.
Yeah.
I think it makes it doesn't make you look wise.
It wasn't fun. Sad. It wasn't even fun.
We do have a call.
Vulgar.
We do have a call.
Tacky's tacky, no matter where you find it. That's what I think.
That's preach, Miss Ellie.
Hi, is this Max?
Hi, yes.
Hi, Max. I'm glad you called. What's your question?
Hi. So I'm trying to think how to phrase this. Well, my question is, how do you cope with burnout? Because I graduated high school last year, and 2 weeks after graduation, moved to the city. I live in Chicago now. And first year was really hard. The last few months I've been doing so much better, but it's been very hard getting back into religion and working magic. And it's just,
burnout.
Doesn't feel good to be so disconnected.
Yeah, very human.
Oh.
So how do you all deal with burnout?
I couldn't say I've really experienced it too many times, but I have been running Cullen since my early 20s, which was just a few years ago. And so
4 years.
I have had moments in my life, I suppose, where I was kind of going through burnout, but it wasn't about the craft. It was about my life spiraling, and so it's hard to be. One of the things that we teach, and this I do believe comes from Maxine, I believe, is that you have to have your home right. You have to have your head right. You have to have your family right. You know, it's hard to work craft when you're out of balance. So you have to, you know, can't go to a coven and train as a priesthood when you're worried about how you're going to pay for your supper. So there are some things you have to set in order. So whatever is burning you out is probably the problem and not your path. Though I would advise that, also based on my experience in some of my most deepest times of emotional peril, I really drew on the craft for strength, and doing that work and focusing on that helped bring me back from the dead, metaphorically.
Ellie, how do you deal with burnout?
Well, I'm going to repeat what Brian says about, I was told early on in some other Rosicrucian training that tending the hearth fires, you need to be well physically and mentally. You need to have a stable career and a home that is dependable. Whatever you're choosing is fine. If you want to go to college and live in a small dorm and work part-time because that's what you're doing for your working life, do that. There's no judgment about it. But if you don't have your personal life fairly organized and your health in strong order, it's going to be more difficult, I think, on your energy to do strong religious or devotional work. And I have burnt out many times in my life, just in life, not just religiously, but in life. One of my favorite activities in forever is right before I go to sleep and I get covered up in my little bed and I put the pillow next to me so it's dark. It's like a little cave. And I see myself go into a cave and there's a little tiny candlelight in the back on a piece of rock. And I just go to that light and I kneel down and I say, light of the universe, light of love, support me, help me, and guide me in my best work for the good of all. And that sustains me even in the most difficult days and nights. So there's tools to use, but you got to keep your shit together. It's hard to do.
Blessed be.
So,
Blessed be.
Carie, how do you deal with burnout?
So I have to ask a quick question. Max, is this you, honey?
Hold on.
Are you the Max that did? Go ahead.
I know and
I
love.
have Max.
I think it's the same person.
Max, I have you muted only because there's feedback from where the show is playing in the background so we can hear it. So I did mute you, so I'm sorry, but I can unmute you to answer Carrie's question. But if you can hear me, please turn off the show in the background.
I had a quick question because I'm wondering if this is the same Max. I remember, did I meet you and your mom in front of Omen like a couple years ago and hugged you on the street?
Yes,
Is
Me
this the
too.
same?
I love you.
Hi, honey.
I know.
That was such an amazing experience to meet you guys.
Lovely. So Carie,
That was, and I remember I walked you down to Hex, and I think you met Ellie that day too.
Yes.
But we've watched you. You graduated. You're
Perfect.
off to
Okay.
college. You're moving
Yes.
into your own world, and you're thriving. And you also say, "I'm healing and healthy for myself." That's your number one goal. If you can't really show up for yourself, then you can't show up for a religion or a devotional practice.
Yeah.
I love that you're doing it. I think it's wonderful.
With burnout, how do I deal with burnout? I think just for me personally with burnout, I have to kind of acknowledge it, and then I have to recede. Like I have to just make sure that, I'm healing myself. Because here's the thing sometimes with, I think, magical practice, especially when you work with a coven, because it is a level of intimacy that you will never experience in any other aspect of your life until you are initiate, until you're in that coven. And I don't care what other books have said, anything, until you are in that coven, you don't know, period. So there is this beautiful level of intensity and intimacy, and it's responsibility. And
Yes.
it's not up to the people in your coven to navigate that. Like we're all human. We all have energies that ebb and flow, but you kind of with Ellie and Brian and Levi were saying, and I 100% agree with this, you have to make sure that, I'm going to get real Appalachian with this, and I feel like Levi will appreciate this. You got, your house has to be in order. Your house has to be in order. You can't, it's not up to everybody else to fix your finances, to fix your health. You have to,
Yeah.
A paper shack
one of
is
the things.
not a house.
Or Brian, you've used a beautiful phrase many times over the years, which is, where do you want to live?
Yeah.
And that goes so much farther than your physicality and your geography. Where do you want to live? And then Ellie and I have talked about this in great detail of just energetic vibrations, like planetary connections. Just it's up to you to navigate all of the other aspects of your life. And it's not saying that like a coven can't help. A coven can help with healing or work for abundance or this or that, but you have to come in with this level of like grounding and focus, and be very confident in your skin and what you're doing. And so what I do with burnout, like I recede until I can recalibrate. And that's in all aspects of my life, not just as an Alexandrian, but with like romantic partners. I may have just told on myself romantic partners, but friends, work, everything. Like I have to recede and recalibrate and kind of refocus. That's what helps me.
I get in bed with
at
my
any rate.
dogs and a bottle of wine. Kingston and Little Bear and Ellie just get all.
You put it in that big Bubba cup.
Did that answer your question, Max?
Yeah. I do think I've been doing a lot of healing work. It is still my dream to eventually be initiated as an Alexandrian priest. And I've kind of been realizing I'm not doing enough work. I've not had as much devotion. I'm like,
Unfortunately, I think we lost him.
Oh no, Max, I lost you.
But if you're still watching, yes, continue the work. Continue the journey.
I want to say that too.
Before we get into anything else, because we're running out of time.
We are.
So I want to just give our closing things for next week. So next week on Thursday, our ambush interviewer will be Karen Sayer, who is an
Karen!
An Alexandrian high priestess
I got excited.
from Washington. And so she'll be doing our ambush interview. And so one last time, Carie, will you tell people where to find you and plug anything you want to plug?
Oh, yes. So you can find me. I'm a psychic and medium at Omen in New Orleans. I host the seances on Friday and Saturday night at Hex New Orleans. You can find me on Instagram at Darth Borealis. You can look me up on Facebook at Carie Ewers. And stay tuned for an occult cookbook and Wandering Witch Paranormal. And I'm also a researcher from MUFON, so I like aliens. So got fun stuff coming up for y'all for the next few months.
So Ellie is going to say her last parting words and then goodbye to the audience for us.
My parting
Thank y'all so much for having me. Blessed be.
Of course, blessed be.
Blessed be.
My parting words is there is nothing keeping you from standing at your altar of yourself and of the gods and do a prayer and ask for health and strength. Every day for 1 minute, you can show up to do some devotion and keep your connection with or without a coven, with or without a book, with or without any training. Your heart to the heart of the gods is the true power. Blessed be.
Blessed be, Ellie. It's beautiful. Thank you, Ellie. Blessed be.
And we can all do that. We can. We must.
No, not everyone.
You made me cry, Ellie. I was just like, oh, that's so beautiful.
No, I
But
know,
it's
I
true.
believe in it. I believe
There are
in it.
many people who can't do that, in my opinion. Go.
Well, they're not our people.
They're not our people. But no, yes, I think it's been a lovely episode. I'm looking forward to Karen. I think it's going to be fabulous. And
Karen!
I know Karen is wonderful. She
Love
is
her.
just a
She's
creature of love.
fucking fabulous.
She is absolutely wondrous.
I think she's dry and sarcastic too. I think she's really going to give us a run for our money.
I think she's going to have great questions.
Oh,
is
she's
what
so
I think.
fabulous.
But yes, and of course, please subscribe if you're watching through X Education. Follow us for the next Covendom episode. And if we didn't get to your questions this time, sometimes you go through the comments or sometimes you can come back and ask them again. Thank you for participating. It has been wonderful. We hope you all have a wonderful night.
Blessed be. Thanks, y'all.
All right.
Bye, everybody.